All right. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Everyone in chat, we're delighted to see you here today. Today's panel discussion is going to be all about caring for yourself during COVID. And if you're hearing some weird feedback right now, that's my garage door. I'm in the room right above it. Timing could not have been better. Anyway, welcome everyone. I hope you all have water. I hope you're all sitting comfortably and you're ready to have some great discussions about how to take care of yourselves during this very challenging time that we're all finding ourselves faced with. In my community, I guess I should probably start with who I am, right? In case you don't know me. I'm Snaps. I am a broadcaster here on Twitch, and I also talk a great deal about mental health and mindfulness. I do a little bit of mindful coaching. In my community here on Twitch, we have one way that we like to try and check in with ourselves, and that is through this acronym called SHADES. SHADES stands for sleep, hydration, air, diet, exercise, and stillness. Stillness being things like meditation and journaling and things like that. So we have our own little way of kind of checking in, but we wanted to go a little deeper this week during this session. So I reached out to this lovely team of folks that you're looking at here and asked them if we could collaborate on some ways that you can understand COVID and its impact on our world a little bit better. And then to give you some resources so that you can feel empowered to take better care of yourselves, regardless of your own circumstances. If you feel that you have a lot of resources and time available to you, or if you don't. So I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves right now, starting with Corey. Corey, tell everyone who you are, or where they can find you, and what you're all about.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Corey. My company is Esports Healthcare. I think it might be backwards on your feed on my shirt there. You can find me on Twitter, esports_health. You can find my website with all the information about what we do at esportshealthcare.com. So my profession is chiropractic. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I have my personal training certificate for certified strength and conditioning specialist. And I'm trying to bring health and wellness into the gaming community. So my primary focus is, of course, on the physical end, considering I'm a chiropractor and personal trainer. So most of the stuff we do is trying to focus on injury prevention, general health and wellness for physical, considering that gaming is actually very physical, despite the fact that everybody thinks we just sit around and don't do much. So check us out and hopefully learn a little bit about what we do. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for that quick rundown, and thank you for being here today. We're going to head over to you, Brian. If you want to introduce yourself, same thing.
So my name is Brian, but I go by the name of Donny Cartel. I'm a content creator for Last Rights, and I am a personal trainer based here in London, as well as a qualified strength and conditioning coach. And I've also got a qualification in precision nutrition, and I've also got a mini company that's starting off recently that I call Inspired Training, which is more on the lines of what Corey's business is essentially bringing awareness to esports competitors as well as content creators, bringing awareness of how physically demanding it can be, even though we're not moving, and the importance as well of self-care, mobility, training, nutrition, and all of that good stuff. So you can find me on my personal account and at Donny the Cartel, and also Inspired Training, which is the same thing, at Inspired Training.
Awesome. Thank you. And if you're looking for those social links, I tweeted them all out, so you can find them there relatively easily. Matt, you're up. Let us know who you are, where to find you, and what you're all about.
Sure. So my name is Matt. I'm a licensed social worker. Primarily, I work with substance abuse within adolescents and adults in a rehab and outpatient setting. I am fairly new to the gaming community, not new to video games, just new to the community. Primarily, I am an advocate for mental health, its treatment, and all things to do with up here. Primarily, you can find me on Twitter at CryRush920. It's a personal account. And my Twitch that I just started 2 weeks ago at Tap the Zap. It's a long story.
You'll have to tune in to find out that long story. I know I'm going to be asking after this. All right. Thank you, Matt. I'm glad that you could join us here today. Okay, Nick, we're going to throw things over to you.
All right. So first of all, thank you everybody else for joining. It's a huge honor to be amongst this crowd, and all of them do some amazing work for not just the gaming community, but just people at large. So my name is Nick Malky. I'm basically a fourth-year medical student that's now on his acting internships, which is basically what you do as the equivalent of a first-year resident. When you come out of med school as a doctor, you are a first-year resident and you work your way up through residency. So in a couple months, I will be Nick Malky, MD. A lot of you guys know me as Glacial Void online. And as far as like what type of doctor, I'm thinking either anesthesia or internal medicine. So basically the doctors that take care of you when you get admitted to the hospital. So a lot of what's going on right now. And I'm currently in the application process. So I guess in a couple months, we'll see what kind of doctor I end up being. So if you want to stay up to date with that, I just made a YouTube channel, Nick Malky, MD. So YouTube / and then you guys probably know me better as Glacial Void. So twitter.com/glacial_void.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know when I was reaching out, trying to find some folks to have a nice conversation about all of this, we had another friend who was going to be joining us, Sav Lewis. She's a therapist. I was really looking forward to talking to her. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity to work with her in the future as well. But one of the things that stood out, Nick, that I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about is I know that you were working in on the COVID wards or floor. I don't know how you would define that, but I know that you were working very closely with folks dealing with COVID. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of briefly run us through what your experience has been like in that, and then hopefully take some time to kind of reinforce what we should all be doing to help manage ourselves and the possible spread of COVID right now.
So to start things off, we're going to try to tackle everything COVID related in the healthcare system in about 5 minutes. No, but seriously, it's a huge topic. And if you guys wanted to learn more, you can feel free to hit any of us up after the fact. But in order to sort of get this conversation really rolling, from my personal experience in the hospital, it has definitely taken its toll in the sense that, you have people working longer hours, you have, people putting themselves on the front line, getting sick and other people having to pick up for them. As far as workflow efficiency, it kind of has made it more difficult in the sense that we have such a strong need for all these rooms that there are more patients and there are rooms available. So you have patients, once they're cleared as COVID negative, they're shifting all around the hospital. So now you're going, instead of seeing people all in one place for your team, you're all over the hospital, things are all over the place. And that really comes down to allocation of resources, right? So what that means for everyone else out there is that we want to really take a look at what we can do to prevent the strain on the healthcare system, because whether you're talking your local healthcare system or you're talking the world at large, the US, global, or overseas, basically you have a certain finite amount of resources, whether it's personnel, rooms, protective personal equipment, or even ventilators or treatments available, and you have really a higher amount of people than you do all of these resources. And if we continue to let the rate of infection spread faster than we're able to address it, then that's where, some places, unfortunately, like overseas, where their healthcare system collapses is because they essentially have way more cases than they do resources available. So what that means for us is, again, we need to be doing proper hygiene, masks, and social distancing, because again, think about this: we have COVID, and it is a huge issue. I've seen people that they're there for a week or more. Some people, they get better faster, but generally, if you have to go to the hospital for an infection, it tends to be pretty serious. Pneumonia being the most common severe symptom. And so you're there for a long time. The people that have heart attacks and liver disease and kidney disease, people that have cancers and stuff, the people that have other diseases, they don't just go away or stop existing. They're still there and they need attention too. So we need to do our part in making sure that we, have a proper allocation of resources, that we allow those to be available for the sickest people, the people that could not afford to avoid getting sick. So what that means for us then is, again, the proper hygiene. And, it does sound repetitive, I know, but it really is true for any sort of like infectious airborne type of disease, or just any disease that can spread on surfaces. So hand washing, proper hygiene, all that stuff, you don't think about it, but now you'll probably pay attention to how many times you touch your face during the course of the day. You touch a whole bunch of different surfaces, and I promise you, not all of them have been cleaned down in the last 30 minutes, or let alone the last couple of days, okay? And so you touch your face, you rub your nose, or you know what I mean, and rub the corner of your eye, and that's how you introduce yourself to a whole bunch of different infectious agents. And that can be anywhere from the last few hours for some of the fomites specific to COVID, but it can also be even up to a couple of days, like 2-3 days. So you really need to be paying attention to when you're touching stuff and making sure you're washing hands. Soap and water is preferable, but even the hand sanitizer, that's great too. The other major thing is that these particles can spread on surfaces. Whether someone coughs or sneezes, they're all around you. They can also just be kind of hanging out in the air. So what we call that is a respiratory droplet. And when you're coughing, sneezing, even when you breathe out, you have droplets of vapor leaving your respiratory tract. And what that essentially means is that you now have these droplets that can travel a certain distance, almost like in an arc. And typically the maximum quoted range is about 6 feet for how far those can travel. And just as a side note, I just want to shake the hand of whoever it is that's job it is to measure that distance, but figuratively, because of course we're not shaking
maybe
hands.
Maybe touch
right now.
elbows.
Yeah, maybe. Oh,
wave from a distance.
We bump elbows all the time in the hospital. But beyond that, that's where you get the 6 feet thing from. That's where the social distancing comes from. Or you hear people saying 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, stand 6 feet away. That, or you are, you're into some weird stuff and people need their space. So I'm looking at you. Yeah, stop that.
It's definitely that one right there.
That one. Stop being weird. But yeah, so that's where the 6 feet comes from. And then the last part is where you have smaller droplets, right? So viral particles, they don't have to be on the big droplets. They can hang out in the little droplets. The little ones, because they are smaller, they don't have enough mass to accumulate and fall directly to the ground. That's where they kind of hang out in the air, because their mass is so small that they can just kind of hang out in a general area where someone that's been infected has been breathing or interacting or what have you. And so, with that being said, they're sort of treading water or air, I guess, in this case. And so for that reason, we wear the masks, right? So you don't know where those places are. In a perfect world, you're just staying home. You don't have to go anywhere. But if you're wearing a mask, you can filter, it would filter the smaller droplets, but more than that. And I think the one thing that I want people to understand is that the masks aren't just for your own personal protection. They are to protect the other people around you. They're keeping your droplets, your respiratory, anything, or whatever you've got cooties, whatever you've got going on, it's keeping it confined to you. So it's not spread out in the environment. Okay. So, that's really the most important thing for the immunosuppressed people like, that are the elderly, like protecting grandma, protecting, little baby Justin, just born 2 weeks ago, whatever the case may be. So, I think those are probably the most important points from the healthcare perspective of why, we talk about this, proper, healthcare or, protective protocol.
All right. I appreciate that. And I also am grateful because we just had, a medical professional confirm the existence of cooties. So that's some big stuff today, guys. Wow.
Always knew I had it.
I know, right? I got my cootie shot way back when. I was like, circle,
every 10 years.
Now I got my cootie shot. We're set, but I'll still wear a mask and do my social distancing. So I appreciate all of that clarification. And I know that there has been a lot of confusion related to why we need to be wearing those masks, why we should still be doing our best to stay at home. So I appreciate all of that clarification. So taking that to our next point, we know that social distancing is necessary right now. And we cannot deny that while we understand the value of it and why we're doing it, it can be really hard on us. It can be hard on our minds. It can be hard on our bodies. People are now in a position that they never really thought they'd be in. Routines are kind of getting destroyed. More folks are working from home. More folks are having to, deal with their kids and their families all being in one place. It can be a very challenging time right now, but we want to make sure that we're still taking good care of ourselves. So I've got Corey and Brian here to talk more about that. And we're going to start with you, Corey. What are some ways that folks who are at home, who maybe don't have a ton in terms of resources, time, money, whatever, what are some ways that they can be taking better care of themselves during this time? What's most important right now?
I think the most important thing is trying to maintain a healthy routine at home. So the physical distancing, social distancing is so important to prevent the spread of this disease. But then what ends up happening for most people is we stay home and we get out of our daily and weekly routine. So instead of getting up and going to work, we are going to work from home. So now maybe you get up later. So you didn't get up at your normal time. Maybe you didn't eat the same breakfast. Maybe you didn't exercise prior to work because you're just going to stay in bed for that extra hour. And it's much easier said than done, but the routine is really important. It's essentially trying to stay regular with your healthy habits. And I know Nick had mentioned, but just a minute ago, about hygiene. And I think a lot of people think that hygiene is specifically in reference to washing your hands, cleaning surfaces, and just essentially keeping things clean, like for yourself and things around you. But hygiene is actually it's the habits, the practices, the routines that we have that are specifically to prevent disease. And that it's not just washing hands and cleaning surfaces and physical distancing. It's including things like a sleep schedule. It's including things like healthy diet. It's including things like exercise. And those 3 points are, in my opinion, 3 of the most important factors of general health, not just in the time of quarantine, but every day. So the one I want to start with is your sleep schedule. So sleep schedule, I've noticed when quarantine first began, following so many gamers on Twitter and here and there, I noticed that so many tweets and so many comments were that my sleep schedule is screwed up. Quote, I'm not sleeping well. I stayed up late and now I'm sleeping through the day and awake overnight. And that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. So for sleep habits, we call that regularity. And regularity is essentially trying to go to sleep and wake up around the same time every day, same time every night, same time every morning. And obviously it's not precise. It doesn't have to be exactly 9 p.m. to exactly 5 a.m. or something like that. Generally, you want to give yourself an hour of leniency in either case at night and the morning and go for that 8-hour range. And that's just by doing that, if you can maintain a healthy sleep schedule, you're already setting yourself up to keep your body healthy. So in my opinion, and based on plenty of research, I believe sleep is the single most important aspect of general health. And I understand the arguments of other things, but I do believe that sleep is the absolute number one. And so we start there. So once you have your healthy sleep schedule, then you want to make healthy decisions throughout the day. So it's very easy at home to start eating badly. So a lot of times if you have a schedule to go to work, you go to school, wherever it is, you plan your day and you include meals that you either prepare or you're purchasing. Some people do meal prep. Now you're stuck at home, so all that stuff kind of falls off and you're not prepping your meals anymore. You're probably ordering out more frequently. I didn't prepare food, so I'm just going to order pizza. I didn't prepare food tomorrow, so I'm going to order bacon, egg, and cheese. And those things are fine. Those are things that you need to do to enjoy yourself, but it's not supposed to be the routine. Pizza and those types of foods are the cheat meals. Those are your once a week, maybe less, that you do to enjoy yourself and have, so you're not suffering all the time. But your routine is important. So in terms of nutrition, the basics that we go by is I always preach to eat a carbohydrate based on your physical activity level. So if you're incredibly active, like a professional athlete, you need a huge amount of carbs. If you remember back in the Olympics, Michael Phelps described his diet, including something like 12,000 calories a day. And there was something like 6,000 or 7,000 calories through carbohydrate, which he certainly needed. But for the rest of us, we don't do 1,000 laps every minute like he did when he was training for the Olympics. So the carbohydrate intake should be a lot less.
Even if you're an esports athlete and you're out there just shredding.
Yeah, exactly. And the diet portion, it's about eating meals that have full nutrition. So highly nutritious meals with the appropriate amount of macro. So if you're eating pretzels and chips all day, you're getting a huge amount of carbohydrate, you're getting really unhealthy fat, and you're getting a lot of the same mineral. You're getting a ton of salt and sodium, but not a lot of the other vitamins and minerals. So what we look at is trying to get nutrient-rich food with higher, hopefully your diet includes a high volume of monounsaturated fatty acids or animal-based polyunsaturated fatty acid, which is fish or fish oil primarily. And protein and carb, I believe, should be based on your physical activity level. So you need a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of carb just to survive. But if you become more physically active, those two go up and the fat can stay where it is or maybe even go down a little bit. And then the last portion is trying to stay physically active. So obviously, when you're in quarantine and you're stuck at home, it's very easy to just sit at the computer and do your work. And then when you're done with your work, sit at the computer and play video games. And don't get me wrong, I'm with you on that 100%. It's very easy to avoid physical activity and just play video games all day. That's why I got involved in healthcare for gamers, esports healthcare, because I found myself doing that in grad school. I was just playing video games all day, and then my body hurt, and I said, wow, somebody should figure out how to fix this. So we worked on that. But exercise and physical activity is one of the other three, I describe them as pillars of health. It's one of four most important things that you can do for your overall health. So we talked about sleep, we talked about nutrition, which all balance everything, including your immune system, your hormones, your mood, and mental health. And exercise is another huge portion of that. So when I say exercise, I know a lot of people will immediately think weight training, resistance training, dumbbells, things like that. Exercise doesn't have to be resistance training. That's one subset. So I actually prefer for the general population to use the phrase physical activity. So ultimately what you want to do is just increase your heart rate, increase your respiratory rate, do something that challenges your muscles a little bit. It doesn't have to be aggressive weight training. You don't have to be a bodybuilder or a power lifter. So I'm reading in the chat quickly. Somebody mentioned it sounds a lot like Shades, which is exactly right.
That's actually how we bonded.
That was how I first associated with Snaps, because she posted that and I said, I love Shades because I do the same thing with a little bit of a different flair to it. But the exercise portion, the physical activity, is something that I remember the ACSM would recommend 30 minutes of accumulated physical activity on most days of the week. So it doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be weight training. You don't have to go for a run. But if you walk around the neighborhood, you walk your dog, you do maybe some body weight calisthenics, some squats next to your computer, maybe some push-ups or something like that. Challenge your muscles, increase your heart rate, increase your respiratory rate. And that little bit, even accumulating 30 minutes a day, it could be 5-minute bouts, it could be 10-minute bouts. Eventually, all of those things improve everything about your body. So your physiology improves drastically when you do physical activity. And it's not a huge burden, 30 minutes on most days of the week. It's something that's, if you schedule it, back to what I began with, is creating a routine. So go to sleep around, between these 2 hours, wake up between these 2 hours, set up a meal plan where you're going to eat X amount of times per day, try to dedicate the time for your meals, dedicate the time for your exercise. And in my opinion, if you do those three, plus a few other things that we'll get the other panelists to talk about, those things are where they're going to keep you incredibly healthy, or as healthy as you can be during a time of quarantine where there's nothing else available. I mean, you can't go to your gym or your health club because it's closed. It's hard to do things like grocery shopping because you have to put on your mask and it's uncomfortable and it's annoying. And so I understand the difficulty, but if at the end of the day, if you can create a routine that includes sleep, a balanced diet, and exercise, you're doing the best you can at home during this very strange time in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the additional distinction of like kind of getting rid of the word exercise, which can be very like, oh, do I have to? And just physical activity.
Physical activity, yeah.
Hitting the stairs a couple extra times if you're running downstairs for water or whatever, taking that extra walk. That's really appreciated. And that I think that distinction is helpful. And you even mentioned, accumulated time.
Yeah.
When we say 30 minutes, I think a lot of folks are like, who's got 30 minutes? But you got 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there. Like you have the ability to build this into that day for yourself.
Yep.
So on the subject of nutrition, before we head over to Brian to kind of get into this a little bit deeper. And for the record, friends in chat, if you have any questions for anyone on the panel here, ! Questions, where did it go? A moderator will clarify, but you can do ! Question or questions and ask a question of the chat here. Let me just find out. Questions with an S. I am good at my job. So if you have questions for these folks, you can feel free to continue to ask them as we go. So Corey, if you could have just one thing that people add to their diets during this time, like something that feels kind of necessary across the board, almost regardless of your circumstances, what food would you be suggesting people have more of?
I think a lot of people lack the healthy fat. So the healthy fat primarily is we call it monounsaturated fat. So the monounsaturated fat you'll find in things like peanuts, tree nuts, avocado, extra virgin olive oil is the recommended. You can have, there's other oils that are also mono, but extra virgin olive oil is the number one. And then the other healthy fat I mentioned briefly before is the animal-based polyunsaturated fat. So that's your fish and your fish oil. So I think if you can add those things, hopefully absent of allergy, you can add peanuts, tree nuts, avocados into your diet and include a healthy fish oil or eating fish a few times a week. But specifically, this is personal and it's funny, but make sure if you're eating fish, you're paying attention to the type of fish, because if you eat, for example, tuna and you eat it too frequently, you increase your blood mercury. And I had a very intense mercury toxicity because I ate tuna basically every day for a really long time. And I had to do a detox and it was awful. So don't do what I did and instead take a supplement or eat a fish that's freshwater, like salmon, that's not going to have a huge amount of mercury.
I appreciate that you made that mistake so that we wouldn't have to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
We'll call it a case study. I did that on purpose to study for everybody else so you don't have to do it.
Totally. What a guy. Yeah. Nick, you wanted to add something to that?
Well, two things. Do you mind if we write that case study together? I think we can actually go places. No, but I think that was exactly spot on. Most people have no issues, identifying meats as proteins and everything else pretty much as carbohydrates, and they're not really sure what exactly fats are. And when they're eating fats, they're usually eating saturated fats, which you don't need, because I promise you, just from the regular stuff you eat every day, you'll have enough. But just based on, without getting too complicated, based on the chemistry going on in your body doesn't have some of the proteins that can convert different types of fats. And so you do require some of these polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats because your body can't make some of them. And there's a lot of chemistry going on in your body, and your body needs it to just maintain regular function. So absolutely 100% agree.
Awesome. Thank you. I saw you were nodding real big on that. Yes, go ahead.
One more comment. So many people believe when you're eating fat, they think eating fat makes you fat. And that's actually so far from true. It's the furthest from true in terms of the mistaken nutrition opinions that people have. The thing that ends up increasing your body weight is a combination of excess calories, lack of physical activity, and then other major issues are high carbohydrate or high sugar intake, leading to a insulin resistance, which leads to the excess body weight. It's a long conversation that I'm not going to have right now because it'll take up all the time. But fat doesn't make you fat. It's excess calories, which tends to be more often in the carbohydrate and sugar realm than it does in the fatty acid realm.
Okay, thank you for that additional clarification. All the more reason, friends, for you all to make sure that you're following these folks so that you can continue these conversations after this session. So we touched on it a little bit with everything that Corey just shared. Brian, I'm interested in hearing from you. You work closely with people to help them work on their physical health and their overall well-being and nutrition. What are you doing for yourself during these times? And what are you advocating for people who don't have a ton of resources, but should be taking better care of themselves as well?
Yeah, so like I go by, I try and go by what the profession is. So like if you're a content creator, esport competitor, or from the normal office worker, I try and come from the perspective of like how do you want to best optimize your performance, so to speak. So starting with sleep, for example, your body tends to like a consistent routine, as Corey's covered. So by going to bed at the right time, always roughly having the same amount of sleep, and having a consistent routine just before you go to sleep as well. So like, are you looking at a screen like 5 minutes before you go to sleep? Are you eating very heavily just before you go to sleep? Because that can also affect your sleeping pattern, even though you are asleep. So your body likes consistency, and I go by the philosophy of like recover just as hard as you train. So if you have trained really hard on a particular day, or you were literally swamped with work, you should sleep just as hard as you did. So I follow by that philosophy, and I sort of gauge my day and how much I need to recover from that as well. You can use some techie devices like I think I use something called the Whoop, which tends to calculate your root percentages in the morning. It tends to calculate your how much you've recovered throughout in the evening. So if you want to go really, really fancy, you can invest in a little device like that. I think it's like a subscription for that. And I use it myself, and as well as 2 other athletes that I currently train. They use it as well as to monitor their recovery as well. In regards to like nutrition, I used to be like very a numbers person. I used to like count like almost every single calorie that I used to consume. Some people are very number oriented. Some people just look at the portions and just kind of know. I've now evolved into that kind of individual. Now I kind of look at a plate now and see roughly that is enough for me, or if it's too much for me. So, and I also gauge it throughout the day as well. If I've had a very heavy training day, I tend to eat just a little bit more, just to help with recovery, help with performance. But if I know that I'm going to have a very down day where I'm not really moving as much, I tend to reduce the amount there as well. One thing that's actually sort of affected, so people are aware as well, pre-COVID, is that a lot of individuals as well eat the same way as if they were still active, like before COVID. So they forget that they're not in that situation right now. Like we're all at home, and but they eat the same way. So there's been a lot of, at least from my clients and some people I've spoken to, a little influx of, I've put on a lot of weight during this COVID thing. So it's kind of like, well, are you still eating the same as you were before?
Like, we're seeing a lot of commentary about like the COVID-15 right now. So that's, exactly. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are sweating in their seats right now, like, so
like, so it's kind of like little basic things like that. I don't like to smash people with like numbers and formulas and stuff like that. It's trying to just start with the basis of, are you eating enough to optimize your performance for the day, basically. Okay. And if you're not, then you can just reduce it slightly. Simple as that. And obviously as well, like the quality of foods as well. So free range, organic, do your best to get it from those sources. I know it can sometimes be a bit pricey, and that's completely understandable. Like Whole Foods you mentioned, over here in the UK, we've got something called Planet Organic. Is not cheap food, but I try my best to put a bit of funds on the side to obviously try and get good quality.
And reasonably,
as
if you're
best as I can.
cutting back on your diet a little bit, if you recognize that you're a little more sedentary and you kind of cut those portions down a little bit, there should be a little bit of room there to potentially buy some higher quality items. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, if you're optimizing a good routine, a good sleep, that will also will help your immunity as well. So, i.e., if you have concerns about your health during COVID, you are literally doing something good for yourself already by sleeping better and eating better, essentially. And as for like exercise, the way I train my clients is essentially trying to make them into the best possible coach for themselves. So, for example, I want, regardless if they want to do weight training or just body weight training, I want them to sort of become more self-aware of their body and how it feels. So when they exercise, do they realize that one limb is stronger than the other? Is there a muscular imbalance? And if so, correct that, because that will later on might stem into other issues or other imbalances that you were unaware of.
So you've got to stay mindful as you're doing these exercises,
exactly.
or that's going to just fly right by.
Exactly. So it's leaving no stone unturned is what is my little approach. So I always tell my clients, I don't want to coach you or train you for the rest of my life. So eventually I would love for you to be your own PT, your own nutrition coach, and your own life coach as well. So what have I got here in the notes here? So yeah, so start with the basics and invest as well. If you're at home, invest into some minimalistic equipment such as bands or a foam roller.
Can you give us like an estimate of around like how much that typically costs for like the resistance bands and a foam roller?
A foam roller will typically cost you between, I mean, £15, £20. I'm not sure how much that is in
I
dollars,
think here the last time I bought a foam roller, it was like I got one that was small and it was like $8. I think the most I've spent was like 15.
Yeah, it's not really a lot of money, and same with the bands as well. Depending on the resistance, it might differ in price, but you can get like a whole set of bands for like almost all the resistance for like 30-40 pounds or maybe $50 over there. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
But you're gonna have like a whole arsenal of resistance and a whole bunch of ways you can work out at home as well. I've got a whole bunch of them. Oh, I was with a client today, so it's all in my bag. But I've got like a whole bunch of them in my bag right now. And it's just like little minimalistic equipment that can just do like you can actually have a full-on workout at home pretty much with those pieces of equipment there as well.
Yeah, and there's always yoga too, right? Because yoga mats are like $20.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but literally got one right there, right behind me there. I was just foam rolling just before this, but so like little things like that. Even like for sleeping routine, for example, I like to do a bit of mobility stretching. Sometimes I do a bit of yoga or Pilates with my girlfriend, or a bit of meditation as well, because I've heard so far there needs to be a bit more research, so don't catch me on this, but I've heard that it can help as well with like esports performance as well, like meditation, and because it apparently increases your chances of being in the zone, like, super focused, which is what we all seek when we're trying to do the best that we can at what we do, essentially.
Yeah. In my experience, going from how I used to play, like if I were actually trying to do anything competitive, back when I was still like angry SheSnaps versus the meditating, like very mindful SheSnaps, like I don't tilt anymore, even if I'm playing against people who are like, just wiping the floor with me. I'm like, wow, they're really good at this. And then I get right back into it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it makes a big difference.
You tend to, with meditation and just a little time for yourself just to like reflect on the day, I felt that that's actually helped me a lot as well in regards to like just brushing bad moments in the day and just go about it as if like nothing's happened. Or accepting it and then kind of like just moving on as well. It's good for the mind.
It's great.
And finally, obviously, mobility as well. As I mentioned, I do a lot of yoga, Pilates as well. I'm not going to sound like I'm an expert because I just literally follow videos and stuff, but like there's plenty of stuff there on YouTube where you can follow like a Pilates or a yoga routine for yourself, because we are stationary for long periods of time. It's definitely worth your time to do it as often as you can. And with the bands, as well as mentioned, you can do a lot of mobilizing and stretching routines with that as well. Because being stationary for so long can cause a lot of muscular imbalances in the near future as well. Things start getting very tight, clicky, immobile, and it gets worse and worse if you continue to ignore it. So here's your chance now to actually do something about it, now that you got the time at home, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. I see Nick is jumping up and down.
Yep,
He's excited to add something here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a fantastic conversation. And the last thing you said there, I love that. I love that you're not afraid to admit that there are things that you don't know. And that is true for every single person out there. It's true for myself, everyone here, and for all of you out there. But that doesn't mean that you can't go out and learn new things. That's one of my favorite things is I acknowledge when I don't know something, and then I want to go and I want to learn about it. So use this as a jumping off point for a lot of things that, maybe you're not super familiar with, but, we're leading you in the right direction, and you can learn pretty much anything you set your mind to.
Yeah. The whole purpose of this session was not to give all of you this like, all right, cool, I know what I have to do now. I'm going to go and do every, steps A through Z. This is to give you that jumping off point. You may have heard some words that you don't fully understand. You can always ask for further clarification by doing exclamation point questions in chat and asking your question. But otherwise, this video will be available here, I imagine, long term. So you can come back to this, make notes of the things that you want clarification on, and then go out, find that knowledge for yourselves. Like, none of us would be here talking to you today if we didn't adopt that kind of mindset in our own lives.
Absolutely.
Brian, one final thing that I would like to have you touch on really quick before we move into kind of the mind-body connection, especially because you really set us up talking about meditation, which I will talk about forever. I asked Corey if there was something that we could add into our diets that would be great, and he had some great feedback there. If you could offer some feedback in terms of diet and nutrition for the folks out here, what's one thing that you would say, work on cutting this out of your diet?
Fried food.
Oh no.
As tasty as it is.
This has been great, but I think I need to shut down for today. People are gonna riot.
No, when it comes to I'm not saying never ever take it. You can not necessarily let go, but you can enjoy once in a while. It's absolutely fine as long as you've as long as you know within yourself that you've been active, being consistent. Like a one meal in a week, it should be fine. It's not like the end of the world if you do that. So yeah, I'm not saying don't never ever have it, but I'm just saying don't have it every single day just because it's convenient and you don't have to cook and it saves you time. I tend to prep over the weekend. Me and my girlfriend, we tend to cook for the next 2-3 days, and then on the Wednesday, for example, we tend to prep again for the next 2-3 days and onwards. And then once a week, we kind of just have this one-off day where we eat out as not a reward, but just a little something that we do together.
Yeah. And
that way it keeps me, I mean, for myself, I feel great about it. I've never relapsed, so to speak, ended up going back to old routines or anything like that. So, or old eating habits. So it's worked for me and might work for everyone else, or they might do it slightly different. But at the end of the day, all this information is for you to take and then gauge it in the way that works for your routine, your lifestyle, in the way you do it. So take what you can and just do what you can with it, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. How long does it take you usually? You said you're doing meal prep every few days. How long does it typically take you and your girlfriend to do the meal prep, and what are you prepping, if you can give us that quickly?
For example, we tend to she's from the Philippines, so we cook something called a masaman curry, which is something that I absolutely love. We actually buy it a lot, and we order the paste because we're pretty lucky to have a big Oriental shop right behind us. We tend to buy it from there. We tend to get the free range chicken from the free range section from Asda or Morrison's or whatnot, and we tend to take it in, put some veg in there. And we tend to cook in bulk together. It usually takes us about maybe an hour and a half.
Okay.
And then it's pretty much ready with a bit of rice or whatever carbohydrates you like. much.
Okay. That seems like pretty doable in terms of people who end up choosing to go the meal prep route if you're trying to reduce some of the effort you have to put in on a daily basis.
Yeah. Or if you don't like eating the same thing over and over and over again, just buy in bulk, cut the portions that you wish to eat. So this is my lunch for tomorrow. This is my dinner. Have the portions ready. So all you really have to marinate it, season it, whatnot. Do all that on the weekend. So that way, all you have to do is literally just cook it, basically, and that's it. Cook it and then go read, catch up on some emails, whatever it is that you need to do.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. And I think you kind of queued us up because you were even talking about, habits and you use the word relapse, which ties in really well with where we're kind of heading from here. So, what we've talked about so far has been a lot of bodily specific things, having a good routine, your sleep, all of this kind of stuff. It's easy to look at this as like, this is just stuff I need for my physical well-being, but there is a mental aspect to this as well. So Matt, with all of your wonderful expertise, can you help kind of clarify a little bit more for us how all of these habits impact our minds as well?
No, absolutely. And I've already heard two words that I'm familiar with, relapse and detox, although I've never seen much of in my work, I haven't seen much of a detox from tuna, but I will be on the lookout for it. No, there's a connection with all of this, and I think it's very fitting that I'm going kind of after everybody because there is this connection, and in all the work that I've done, it's always been we rule out medical first, right? When we talk about illnesses, everything has to be medical. Then we go into sort of the behavioral health or the mental health behind it, because anxiety, depression, they can lead into or cause physical illnesses. I've seen during all of COVID, I was called back onto medical floors, COVID floors in particular. And not only did I see patients, but I was working with nurses and doctors who, very incredibly overwhelmed with everything. Their routines were completely broken. I worked in a small community hospital, not even a trauma center, but they became a trauma center overnight. So I was assisting and managing doctors and helping and working with them more than anything else. And I think the one thing that I stressed is to keep some form of a ritual when you come home, and a healthy one, right? Because I think in general, everybody kind of has a sense of what they do on a normal day. They wake up, they have an alarm set for 6 or 7, then they go to work, then they either grab a bottle of water or a cup of coffee and go around their day. For a lot of people, that was completely disrupted. Mm-hmm. There was either they were working from home, there was no more commute, there was no more anything. And so what I think is really, really important with all of this is to keep some form of a schedule. Brian, you were saying before that idea of meal prep, and I think that's a fantastic schedule that everybody needs to at least try, because it was, and I think Corey, you said it before too. I myself, I fell into that habit of, all right, let's just Grubhub some pizza really quick. I'm done. I've had enough today. And I fell into that trap, and a lot of people did. And I think that's one of the ways to kind of catch yourself when you're forming a bad or a maladaptive behavior or habit, is to kind of check and see, I'm hurting myself. I'm drinking way too much of this, or I'm ordering way too much pizza, and I'm hurting myself. And you sort of do that little bit of a checklist, right? Okay, I'm ordering this, and I'm also seeing my blood pressure is rising, right? I'm seeing that I'm not sleeping well anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm noticing all of this, and there's not really many pros. The only pros is I'm happy for maybe 15 minutes because I'm having that pizza. But then, maybe an hour later, I'm feeling like poop, and not the good kind, the bad kind. And,
not like a healthy squatty potty poop.
Right. Exactly.
Got it.
So it's really taking a look at the pros and cons. And that leads into checking in with yourself and being mindful and giving yourself that 5 to 15 minutes a day. We all live very busy lives, whether we're working outside, whether we're working in home. We all live very busy days. The general rule of thumb is, and I'm going to use these words, you deserve 15 minutes to yourself to do nothing. Get rid of the phone, have a cup of water, have something by you, and just sit. Check in with yourself, figure out what you need, figure out what's missing, and then you make that plan. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing that I wanted to touch upon. Self-care is beautiful, but self-care is difficult. You know, self-care doesn't just mean, and we can't do it anymore, unfortunately, but going for a massage. Like it's self-care, don't get me wrong, but it's not the crux of self-care. Self-care is making sure that you can exercise a little bit a day. You know, self-care means you're meal prepping. Self-care means you're going to your doctors regularly, that you're checking in on things. You know, self-care also means, is my anxiety or is my depression or is something kind of going on that I need to seek out professional help? You know, there's nothing wrong with having that conversation with yourself. You know, and I think that's also more important now than ever during kind of these times. You know, it's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be depressed. It's not okay not to work on it, though.
Can you just say that one more time?
It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be depressed. It's not okay to not work on it.
Thank you.
And I'm going to use these words again. You deserve to work on it, right? And the world, however we may view the world, and some of us view it that it's on fire, and that's okay. We need to be all right, though. We owe it to ourselves to be okay. We owe it to ourselves to go visit with the doctor, you know, let them, you know, do your physical exam, whatever it might be, you know, and you deserve to say, hey, you know what? I got to talk to somebody for 45 minutes to an hour, you know, and I encourage everybody who's listening, if they kind of feel as though they can't find anybody to talk to, message me on Twitter. I don't have that many followers. Message me on Twitter. I will gladly help as much as I can to find you someone, because I'll work no matter what insurance you have, no matter, you know, what's around you. There's always somebody out there that's willing to listen and willing to work with you. And I think that's a large thing that everybody's, I don't want to say scared of, but apprehensive about. Yeah. Right? Is the cost of treatment, is the cost of mental health treatment, is my insurance going to cover it? You know, unfortunately, yeah, it's not the greatest covered in the world, but there's ways. And there's people out there, there's support out there. Don't be afraid of a mental health clinic. I work in one. You'll meet somebody like me, trust me. I'm a nice guy, at least I think I am. It's someone to talk to. It's someone to sit with, and someone neutral just to say, hey, yeah, I kind of get why you're feeling this way. Let's make a plan to work on it. Let's make sure you have that 15 minutes just to sit and meditate and focus on you. You know, if you're having all these scary thoughts, let's focus on them. Let's write them down. One of the things I do, and I'll say it really quickly, for any of my clients, you know, when we talk about addiction as well, coexisting is ADHD. A lot of times, especially adolescents, will use substances to cope with ADHD. And one of the things that I do a lot, especially with teenagers, is, okay, write the thoughts you have and circle them. They're in a bubble. The thought's still there. It's going to be there. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to pop that bubble. It can just float on by. And if I work with even younger kids, I actually get bubbles and I blow them. It's so much fun, especially for somebody my age. I love it.
I want to play with bubbles now.
Absolutely, all day. I need to get them in my house. Anyway, but there are these little things, and once again, they sound simple in theory, but it takes time. It takes a practice. I think everybody on this panel right now can say, like, even working out, you don't start with 300 pounds. It's not how it works. You start with 5, you start with 10, and you become stronger. It's the same thing with meditation, and it's the same thing with being mindful. You're going to get distracted when you first try to meditate. You're going to get frustrated because you can't find that center. takes time, takes practice.
Yes.
You know?
I appreciate all of that clarification on that, especially the like, this is something that I talk about with my community a lot is this is a surprisingly kind of simple and straightforward thing a lot of times, but it does not mean that it's easy. This is some of the hardest work you'll ever do. And that 5 to 15 minutes of just sitting that you're advocating for, especially I think for those of us who do have, you know, ADHD brains, it's very easy to get turned off by the 5 to 15 minutes because you sit down and your brain is just like, oh my gosh, you gave me a break. What's up? Okay, let's review this list of a million things that we need to talk about, starting with kindergarten, going all the way up until a second ago when you said that really dumb thing. So what do we tell those people who are feeling very overwhelmed when they try to sit still?
It's almost like the brain is telling. Remember when you called your teacher mom in 3rd grade? Yeah. What I would tell everybody, and I know this sounds weird and I may be repeating myself, it's okay. This is who you are. This is how your particular mind works. And it's a beautiful mind, not to quote the movie, but it is a beautiful thing that you have. And once you kind of accept it and understand it a little bit more, you can control it. And not in a bad way, in a positive way. You can take control of your own self. You can take control. Once again, you see the thoughts. You have all of these things. And the first time you meditate, yeah, it's going to be tough for anybody. You're going to sit there and you're going to laugh because you think it's silly. You're going to go back to 3rd grade, or you're going to go back to that moment in high school where, you know, you ripped your pants, and I'm talking about me. You're going to go back to all these things. But, you know, the second day, maybe one thing doesn't come up. The 3rd time you try it, you start to get a little more, you know, comfortable. You're not feeling as silly anymore in it. You keep practicing, you keep doing it, you'll become a master at it. It takes all practice. You know, 18 to 66 days, right? And I wrote that in my notes. That's how long it can take for somebody to form a habit, both a healthy and unhealthy one. And depends on the person, depends on who you are, things like that. But you just need a certain amount of days for it to just become natural and to become normal for you personally. Like
how you don't have to think too hard about like brushing your teeth in the morning or whatever. It's just something you do.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can take 5 to 15 minutes, everybody has 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm going to say that right out loud. Everybody's got 5 minutes. 15, all right, I'll give it to you. Especially if you're a doctor or if you're, you know, if you're somewhere, maybe you don't have 15 minutes. But Doc, I'm looking at you. You can find 5 minutes. Anybody can. And that's really what's needed. That is what, and I actually not yelled at doctors, but that's what I told doctors in the hospital. I told them like 5 fine minutes. Give it to your resident, and I would tell attendings this. Give it to your residents. Let them handle it. You take the 5 minutes to go have a break. Because that's really what's going to help keep you grounded and keep you in the moment. And I think the doctor wants to yell at me really quick.
No. So first off, I'm like at the lowly resident level where when you tell the attendings to put the work on the other guy, I'm the other guy.
I know. I'm sorry.
I wanted to say I absolutely love that too. I think actually I just love all these people. I love all the things they're saying. But he said, it's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to feel whatever it is you're feeling, but it's not okay to not work on it, right? And so I don't believe in luck, because if it were such a thing, I would be the world's most unlucky person that has ever existed, ever. I don't think that success is any measure of luck. I wake up at 4:30 every morning. I go before everyone else. I show up before everyone else. I see all of my patients. By the time, you know, lunch hits, I work through my lunch. I'm continuing to see patients, call consults, write my notes, do whatever it is I need to do. And then by the time the day is over, sign out to the night team. By the time the day is over, it's 6 p.m. and I need to make it home. And in order for me to wake up at that time, I need to pretty much wake up, go to sleep at 8 o'clock. So I've got about 2 hours to eat, shower, eventually fall asleep, whatever it is I need to do, read up on patients for the next day. But I still find 45 minutes that I take for myself to go and run and like we were talking about earlier, self-help stuff, teaching myself things, I will listen to podcasts or something that I'm interested in so that I'm so passionate about, I'm losing my voice, that I will find things that I'm interested in, so I'm increasing my own understanding so that I'm able to do all the things that I want to do. And I think that everyone has, you know, all these things going on in their lives, some more than others, that's fine. But you cannot continue to give and give and give and give and give and give without ever replenishing yourself, because that is unsustainable and you will crash and burn.
Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, I think, I guess I'm just a chemicals guy. So I'm gonna go back to chemicals one more time. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. And some people have different chemical imbalances in their brain. That's not your fault. That is not your fault. Okay. So what that does mean though, is you have to be willing to accept the help, to go and look for help. And if that ends up being, you know, some sort of chemical help, sure. Okay. The other thing too, and I don't see that mentioned enough, is that these chemicals that you may be taking as medication, they take weeks in order for them to kick in. People start taking some medications and they're like, oh, it's not, doc, it's not working for me. But okay, you didn't get this way overnight. It takes weeks on a chemical level to retrain your neural circuitry in order for these things to be helpful to you. Okay. So you need to really like making things a habit, 21 days, 20 something. It takes like 3 to 6 weeks, really 4 to 6 weeks.
Very much so. Yeah.
So tying in all of these different topics that we're talking about today. And we believe that you can do it. We're here for you. Reach out to any of us. Okay. I just wanted to quickly throw that out there because I just felt very strongly about it.
Thank you.
I'll throw it out just really quick as well. The idea when we talk about that comes up a lot, especially in addiction work, because unfortunately, when we deal with those who are suffering from addiction, it kind of comes in, well, I need something right now that's going to fix me right now. I need to be better now. And getting through and trying to tell everybody there's no such thing. It's not going to be immediate. This takes time. This takes work. This takes effort. This takes you. This takes you being present and you understanding that this is going to be a while, but it's worth it.
Yeah. So it's like the path is the goal versus the ending part of like, you've done it, you're healed, nothing will ever hurt ever again. You won't have problems ever again. Like that's not how it works at all. And I like the way that you both kind of touched on how we all kind of get to where we are now, because this is something that we reinforce in my community as well. The way that you are today is not necessarily your fault, but it is your problem. It's up to you to decide if you're going to be saying the same stuff a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, or if you are going to take action, even though it super, super, super sucks. And while we're taking those actions, and you touched on addiction a little bit, I do want to get into that, especially given that, you know, there are a lot of habits that we can get kind of sucked into. One of the kind of rules I have for my own self is, am I trying to use something to escape my life or enhance my life? That's kind of my own personal, like, am I gaming because I'm excited to game, or am I gaming because I'm stressed and I don't want to think about it?
Yeah.
What are ways that you kind of advise people in terms of how to keep an eye on what they're doing, whether it's gaming or drinking or smoking or whatever? How do you stay cognizant so that it doesn't become something that is detrimental?
This is going to sound weird, but hear me out. Listen to the people around you.
Ooh.
If you're, and I'll say my wife has called me out and I love her for it. If I'm playing World of Warcraft a little too long and I'm getting sucked in, you know, she'll kind of tap me on the shoulder. Everything okay? You feeling all right? Listen to the people around you, especially the ones that you know that care, right? Listen to the people that care about you, because they're going to be the ones that are going to, you know, nicely point out, like, you doing okay? Everything all right? You know,
what about for the folks who are feeling particularly isolated, though, who don't feel like they have that close support system where they're understood?
At that point, then you got to take a look really internally, and I kind of touched on it before, but really make that checklist. If you're starting to kind of feel continuously isolated, and if you're starting to feel even physically bad, let's point out the things why. Let's make the list as to maybe what could be causing it. Right. And I think right now at the top of everybody's list is COVID. but then second and third, what's the one thing working in a hospital, I've only heard things. I'm not a professional when it comes to medical by any stretch, but anybody who comes in with gastro issues, first thing that they say is, well, what'd you eat differently? Did you eat anything differently? Did you take something differently? And I think really that's what we have to look at. If we really start not feeling well, I did have a few too many beers over the weekend, and Monday I'm really sluggish, and start to really try to connect those dots a little bit. Even isolated, even when we don't, maybe have that many people around us, our body speaks a lot louder to us, man. It really does. If we pay attention, it's yelling at us sometimes. Mm-hmm. My body's yelling at me right now. Like, why are you drinking this coffee, bro? That's exactly what it's saying to me. And it's the truth. It'll yell at you. Your body yells. It's our job and kind of our responsibility to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of ties into the whole mindfulness practice, right? Which meditation is a form of. If you are a little more mindful, it's more likely that you're going to notice when your body is kind of screaming at you like, oh, why does my back feel so achy? Maybe it's because I've been sitting in this space for the last week straight.
Right. Why am I, why my legs feel kind of weak? Oh, I've been sitting. And once again, this is where it takes us. We can say, okay, my legs feel weak. It takes us to go that one step further, be like, all right, but why? I've been sitting down too much. I really should go for a walk. Let me take a walk around the hospital, or at least outside of the hospital, just for a little bit. And that's really what it is. You got to listen to yourself.
Brian, you had something you wanted to add to this?
So I'm going to speak from like a little personal. I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to like the mind and stuff, but this is something that I've learned over experience over my, in my entire life, basically. Believe it or not, I might not look like it or sound like it, but I was super freaking anxious before this. Like, this is something that this is my life, basically. This is my fitness, my training, my business. This is everything that I do. And when I speak out, especially to this many people, I get super anxious to make sure that I don't say it. I get really nervous when it comes to all this stuff. And what Matthew said about the loved ones noticing, something's up, literally at that moment, like maybe an hour ago, I think we just started an hour ago, my girlfriend also noticed as well, like, are you okay? Like, is everything, is something's up? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm feeling a bit anxious about this. Like, and I think accepting it as well is accepting it that it's always going to be there regardless, because whenever something comes up that you care about or that you fear failing at or anything along those lines that means a lot, you are going to get anxious. Mm-hmm. So what helped me is just by accepting it and talking to her. Like, yeah, I am anxious. Like, this is something I've never done to this scale before. So I want to make sure I do it right and say it right. And yeah, I just thought she's had a little bit in there. Like, it's okay.
I appreciate that. Did anyone else on the panel here? Did any of y'all get a little nervous before our chat today?
Oh yeah. Every day before I go and see patients, before I go and talk to my attending. Definitely when you're talking to your attending, going and doing anything like this, everybody does. But you have the ability to reframe how you address it.
Yeah. Matt, is that something that you do or work with your patients or clients on, like reframing it?
Oh, 100%. That's one of the biggest things when I was in school. That was the one word that was said, I think almost every class I took. Reframe it. Active listening, reframing. And make sure you listen to the person that's sitting across from you, because that is, it's scary to be in that seat. Mm-hmm. So listening and paying as much attention as possible, but also reframing. There is, I'm sure somebody's seen it, but there's the great Simpsons meme where Bart is saying to Homer, "This is the worst day of my life." And Homer says, what he actually makes it worse. He says, "Well, this is the worst day of your life yet." What I do is, this is the worst day today. We haven't been through the rest of the days yet. You know, let's walk through them first.
Yeah. So
Um,
dealing with your own anxiety, you know, kind of before getting into this, because you said this is your first time on a panel like this. How
mhm.
did you become cognizant of it? And then how did you reframe it so that you could sit here today and you didn't, you know, like text me a few minutes before, like, oh, I'm sorry, I just found out my dog is go to the store and I just can't.
Well, I would have been really lying because I have 4 cats. But
They've assembled together in the
they've
shape
assembled.
of a dog.
No, so honestly, I know with my own personal anxiety, it's sleep. And I went to bed late last night, but I still woke up at 6 o'clock this morning. And I knew like right off the bat, like, yeah, that's anxious. And I'm on my computer. I'm already on the Google Doc. I'm like editing. I'm looking at this. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And it takes me a little bit, but I'm like, okay. And I talk to myself, however you want to look at it. I talk to myself and I'm like, dude, relax. You know this stuff. You've been practicing for a while now. You know, you are knowledgeable. And this is what I would tell everybody else to do. Anybody who's sitting across from me, that self-talk is very important to kind of bring yourself down. You are knowledgeable, you are passionate, you are everything. My own personal therapist, not to get too personal, but she yells at me, but in a good way. And she goes, you got to start writing this stuff down. All the good things that you do, you have to start writing it down, because you're going to take that one bad thing that happens. Like if I were to stutter, let's say one time on this, you know, while doing this, I'd focus on that. I'd be like, I screwed that up. That was a mess. But I forgot about all the 20 good things I may have said during this whole thing. You know, so she yelled at me, and every week she makes me share my screen and share the Google Doc to see what I wrote. And I write exactly what I did that was positive this week. Who did I help, or how did I help myself? And it really is just a matter of catching yourself as soon as you can to kind of just sit. And I actually sat in this chair and I just was like, I got this.
There you
You
go.
know, I tell my teenagers, it's being your own personal hype man.
Yes.
Pretend you're getting on stage and you are hyping up the crowd and you are jumping. You are, if anybody's watched to the show Little Dicky about the rapper Little Dicky, he's got his hype man, Gata. And Gata's the greatest hype man in the world. He's running on stage, he's jumping. And you got to be that for yourself. Be your own personal hype man.
You deserve that.
You deserve it. Absolutely. That's the word of the day. You deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like the whole purpose of this entire panel, right? Was caring for yourself during COVID. It's not just being taken care of. It's recognizing that you need more moments of awareness in your day. You need to pay attention to your body when it's screaming at you. Pay attention to the fact that you're feeling a bit overwhelmed or you're feeling anxious, and stop and sit with it. I heard the word accept multiple times from all of you. Like acceptance is a big part of it. That which we resist persists. If you're stuck in the mindset of like, no, that's not what it is. I don't want that. I'm not anxious, but you're anxious. You're stuck in it. If you can accept where you're at, then you have something you can do. Then you have all these wonderful resources and these experts and all of the access that the internet gives you. There's so much that you can do to take that and run with it. Oh man, I just realized every day I feel like my chest is so tight and I'm so stressed and I'm so anxious. This isn't a matter of like whether that's normal or not. We don't need to get into some idea of normal, but if you're feeling that and you're not loving it, accept that it's there and then choose where you go from there.
The first step when we talk about addiction, or when we talk, anybody who's ever even heard of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, the first step is accepting and admitting that you have a problem. And then once you do that first step, you can then move on to step 2 and so on and so forth, right? It's the same thing when we talk about motivational interviewing, to see where you are in a pattern of change. You know, are you at pre-contemplation, which really is, nah, it's fine. It's good. I'm fine. The world's on fire, but I'm good.
This is fine.
Exactly. Or are we at contemplation where we're really starting to think like, this might be an issue, you know? And as we continue to, and it's a structure, it's a step, as you continue to move forward, you start to realize, okay, something's wrong, but I can fix it. Or I can find somebody that'll help me, or I can talk to someone. I can speak to a doctor because maybe I do have a chemical imbalance, right? And maybe I do need that SSRI that's going to kind of make things a little bit easier to help me with the chemical imbalance. Or maybe I do need to see a therapist who can, hey, give me some tips, or just, you know, maybe just give me just 45 minutes to vent and just scream.
Yeah. You know, that brings up a really important point, and I'm excited that you even mentioned that, because I've talked to some other mental health professionals, and like I know it from my own experience and things too. I think there are some people who get it a little twisted in terms of what those medications are there for in not every single circumstance. Of course, there's always exceptions, but my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that when it comes to anti-anxiety and anti-depression type medications, the goal by and large is not for people to go on those to cure themselves, but it's for them to go on that to feel a little bit more balanced out so that they can do all the other stuff we just talked about. Get really into their own routines.
I'll go back. You rule out medical first.
Right.
You know, and I don't mean to, I'm not going to step on toes as far as like, you know, how a doctor would prescribe or anything like that, but you always go medical first. So you check and see, you know, maybe my levels are a little low. Maybe something's not right. And maybe that's what I need. It's always 50-50. Medication assists with half of the job. Therapy and mindfulness and practice handles the rest.
Absolutely. And just to wrap that up, or just to add my perspective, is like you said, always rule out medical first. You may be feeling some things that are, you know, what seem like to you imbalances or changes, and it turns out that it was actually a latent infection that you didn't even know you had, or it turns out you have, you know, some vitamin levels that are off, that or the, you know, there's structurally, you know, something going on, you know, within, you know, the brain and the spinal cord, something that could be medically explained and needs to be treated, because no amount of therapy or medication will fix that. Even medication will not fix that. Well, I mean, you know, if it's an infection, I guess technically medication will fix that. But you see what I'm saying? Like you always, you rule out the medical stuff first. And then if it's truly, whether it's a anxiety or depressive type of episode or some sort of spectrum in between, because there are a lot of different things that we could talk about today. It's going to come down to how many episodes they have. It's going to be individualized. So for example, someone that has had multiple episodes, especially episodes that require them to go to the hospital, they are much less likely to achieve remission on medications versus somebody that has very mild symptoms. And maybe they don't even really need the medication, but if they take it for like 6 months, then they actually can achieve complete remission. They won't even need to be on the medication anymore. And then the last thing is that therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a whole bunch of different types of therapy, are for most of these diseases, they are equal to, if not used in conjunction with medications. Like it's not one is better than the other. There are exceptions, like they're saying, but a lot of times the therapy is equal to the medication as well. So do not discount that in the slightest.
Not at all. Not at all. You know, if it's just one thing, acid reflux, right? Commonly cause spicy foods, excessive amount of coffee, excessive amount of alcohol, things like that. If you change all of that, right, and you lighten up on the spicy foods, you cut down on coffee, you cut down on all the things that would cause acid reflux, but you're still having it, and you're taking the medication as prescribed, then at that point, you may want to think, well, okay, what are the stressors in my life? When am I feeling this acid reflux? What is going on? You know, and that's, once again, I bring it back to mindfulness, checking in with ourselves. You know, am I working 16-hour shifts and coming home and, you know, just don't have a time because I fall asleep as soon as I get home? You know, is something going on in my family? Is something going on at home? Am I having a different, you know, everything? I could list off 20,000 things that would cause anxiety, but it's really our job to check in, and that way we can address it and make a plan. Because there's no fixing right away, but you can make a plan at the start.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very helpful. And again, mindfulness is like
Mm-hmm.
that has been one of the most instrumental things for my own personal life with dealing with the past issues that I had with anxiety and depression, insomnia, and all of that. Like mindfulness has helped me to get to a place I didn't even know existed. I genuinely did not believe that people who were happy were actually happy. I honestly thought up until literally just a few years ago that they were just way better at faking it than the rest of us were. Like, really, if I saw any
Mhm.
one of you, like the way that Nick has been smiling at everyone today, if I had seen that a few years ago, I would have been like, this guy, he's probably the worst of all of them. No one is that happy. If he's that good at lying, like, he's a serial killer. So we gotta watch out for that guy. I didn't believe that this was a real thing. So I'm eternally grateful that we got to have this discussion and
Mm.
that there was so much tie-in between all of what we all do here. Now, we only have a few minutes left. We didn't get any questions in the little panel thing from chat. So there's one thing I would love to go back to Corey for here, if you don't mind. I think, we've been sitting here for a little over an hour already in our chairs talking. A lot of us have gotten in that habit of kind of blobbing around, just like lazing through our lives here. When we're talking about how to kind of take care of ourselves, I think it would be great if you don't mind giving us some ways that we could just, even sitting in a chair, just stretch out a little bit to try to help out our overall well-being.
Yes, it's not necessarily something you have to do seated. I mean, you can. There's certain things you can do seated. For example, one of the things we recommend for prolonged sitting is to pump your ankles. Essentially, just do calf raises while you sit, because prolonged sitting is the number one risk factor for deep vein thrombosis. And if you don't think that's possible, after the quarantine began, there was a young man in the UK who had a DVT because he played video games after he got laid off from work. Didn't move enough, got a DVT. It broke apart. It became a pulmonary embolism, and this poor gentleman passed away. And it's tragic and it's horrifying, but it's a very real risk factor for people who are primarily sedentary. And if you think about us gamers, while we're doing what we do, while we play video games, we are sedentary. It's a fact. That's how it works. So I wrote a page on my website about how essentially the gamer's guide to a healthy routine in gaming. So it includes warming up prior to playing. So that's the best way to prevent injury, is by preparing and getting everything moving beforehand. Then most of the bulk of the page is very descriptive about how you can separate your gaming and take breaks. So what's the routine for taking breaks? So it's usually the 10-15 minute gap to stand up and just move around briefly, look away from your screen. So if you have a window, look outside, focus on something far away, and then look closely, and then look far away to take the strain off your eyes. At the same time,
I just heard about that the other day. The looking away and looking back. That's helpful. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, I think it's the American Ophthalmic Association recommend. They call it the 20-20-20. So it's every 20 minutes, look at something at least 20 feet away, and do that for at least 20 seconds. So it's their 20-20-20 rule, and that's a perfect rule that we recommend as well. But I always try to break it up. Every 15 minutes, stand up, walk around in a circle, look outside, do the calf raise, pump up your legs a little bit to get the blood flowing, because that's the primary way that you get the blood from your feet back to your heart, is by muscle contraction. There's other things that we do, stretch techniques and movement patterns, essentially to counter all the things that you do while playing. So if you think about when you're gaming, you're sitting, and that means your hips are flexed. So stand up and stretch your hip flexors. So do like a lunge step with the stretch. One of the things we do is called Brugger's position. So that's essentially just turning your palms out. So I can't do it because I'm sitting, but turn your palms out with your shoulders back, pinch your shoulder blades backwards, downward, and tuck your chin. And then kind of just open up your chest that way. We call that Brugger's position. And that's to counter the upper cross syndrome of like leaning forward, slouching, head forward, shoulders rounded. That's to open up and activate the muscles of your back so you're not becoming that slouch position.
We call that gargoyling in my community, when you're just like
Yeah. Yeah, in my world, it's upper cross syndrome, and it's I think it's the second thing I listed on my website's injury list, because I try to put them in order for things that are the most common. Eye strain is absolutely number one. Upper and lower cross syndrome are certainly number two. And then the overuse or the repetitive strain injuries are the lists following that. And it's really just about countering the bad habits. So when you're gaming, you're sitting. So stand up every 15 minutes. When you're gaming, you're not moving at all. So stand up and physically move. Maybe every half hour or hour, get up and walk around the house and do something physical. Walk up and down the stairs if you have them. Every 10 to 15 minutes, look away from your screen, because your screen is only usually 20 to 24 inches in front of you. Look at something far away. And a big one is hydration. It's something that a lot of people skip out on. And hydration is actually quite simple. It's not as challenging as so many people seem to think. If you are not from the US, which is most of the world, then essentially take your body weight in kilo and drink that many ounces of fluid. It's pretty close. Maybe that many ounces plus 5, plus 10 is good enough. If you're from the US, because we don't use metric, take your body weight in pounds, cut it in half, and drink that many fluid ounces per day. The recommendation is specific to fluid ounces. It's not specific to the type of fluid, but a very strong recommendation against sports drinks, sodas, things with essentially avoid your high fructose corn syrup, because it's literally the worst thing that's ever happened to the nutrition food industry. And high fructose corn syrup is a good way to increase your insulin resistance, increase your fat gain, essentially increase your likelihood for metabolic syndromes, overweight, obesity, diabetes. Basically everything that's preventable can begin with avoiding high fructose corn syrup.
Wow.
And so for example, if you drink an 8-ounce coffee, 10-ounce coffee, that's 10 ounces of fluid. That counts. You don't have to drink extra on top of that. The only one that counts against it would be alcohol, because alcohol inhibits what we call antidiuretic hormone, which will make you go to the bathroom more frequently. It'll decrease the fluid in your body, and it decreases your hydration. Outside of alcohol, if you're intaking fluid, that counts. So for me, if I weigh 180, I drink 90 ounces of fluid per day. And that's pretty simple for me. But avoid your high fructose corn syrup, avoid your sugary sodas, your sugary energy drinks, and stay hydrated. Basically, if you have water, that's the option. Do that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for running us through all of that. That was really helpful. Really great. Again, like I can't tell y'all enough how great it's been working with you to create this discussion today. I really appreciate you taking the time to help educate folks on some ways they can take better care of themselves, because ultimately that was, like I said, friends, that's the reason for this title. It's caring for yourself during COVID. You deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel healthy and balanced, to have the energy you need to get through your day and to do all the dope stuff that you want to do. So we're gonna wrap things up now. Those of you who are here on the panel, by all means, go in and let people know again in the chat where to find you. But otherwise, I'll give you a chance to offer a final parting thought. Initially, we were saying if there was only one thing you could do, what would it be? But like anything, if you folks here on the panel want to offer one final parting thought to our lovely audience here, do so, and then tell them where to find you yet again. And Nick, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. So my final parting thought is, no matter what you have going on in your life, no matter how crazy it gets, make sure that you set aside time for you. As somebody that has a lot of his day dedicated to doing things that are almost completely have nothing to do with myself, I find that it's one of the most important things, because no matter how difficult the road gets, it'll keep you going. And I mean, there are days that are harder than others, but I don't ever look back and sort of beat myself down mentally. And I think a large part of that is because, I know what I'm working for, I know what I'm working towards, and I know that if I continue to set aside some time for myself, that, it really is a marathon, not a sprint. And that, the same thing goes, it applies to medicine, but it applies for anything in life. And, I won't share with you guys all the different things that I failed at, but I failed many, 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 many times. And I'm not ashamed of that. because you get up and you keep going, you keep trying. And that's really the only thing that I can say is that where I am
That's
today.
what's up. Tell them where to find you yet again.
Yeah, so you guys can find me at twitter.com /glacial_void if you want like gaming stuff, and if you want to go with more of this like healthcare related stuff, I just opened up a YouTube channel. It's YouTube/NickMalkyMD. Hopefully see you guys there.
Thank you very much. All right, Matt, your turn. Whatever your final parting words are, followed by where they can track you down so they can keep hitting you up after.
Sure. I think I can simply say, everyone, you are worthy. You deserve to be okay. It's okay to not be okay, as long as you get the help and get the things that you deserve to be okay. Do not be scared. Do not worry if you can't find anybody. There is always someone out there that is willing to listen, willing to support, and willing to make you the dope person that you are. I'm going to take a little bit of snaps at it from that. I think that's really what I want to make sure I get across to everybody. As I listen to everybody's socials, I need to be a lot more professional now in my socials. But you can find me. You can find me on Twitter at CryRush920. It's been my gamer tag for years, so it just became my Twitter handle. And I just started a Twitch channel 2 weeks ago. I got 6 followers, and I love all of them. I am at Tap the Zap on Twitch.
Awesome. Yeah, and I like that too, because it goes back to like Mr. Rogers style, right? You look for the helpers.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, community, you got some helpers here. Make sure you follow and support all of these wonderful things that these folks are doing, because they want to support you too. All right,
Absolutely.
Brian, your turn, bud. Let them know any kind of final parting words and how to track you down.
So I would say go about a life as if you're an athlete. Treat your body, mind, and everything as if you're an athlete. Give it the best that you can, the best nourishment that you can, the best routine that you feel will fit best. If you want to produce the best content, you want to be the next, I don't know, Hush or Sir Dimitri's. You want to be the next big thing in esports, or you just simply just want to tackle life like Master Chief from Halo. Optimize everything in your life, treat it like an absolute athlete, like the athlete that you are, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna kill it at life.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and you can find me. Personal account is Donny at DonnyCartel.com, or my more esport gaming related training stuff is NSPYR training. That's my Twitter. That's where all my fitness and video content is.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And we're going to wrap things up with you then, Corey. Your final parting words to this wonderful audience we have here today, followed by how they can track you down to continue to support you as well.
My view on health is 4 parts. So I describe them as the 4 pillars of good health. So it's a healthy sleep routine. So that's what I talked about. Trying to go to sleep, wake up around the same times every day, make that a routine, schedule the sleep. Don't cut out the sleep. It's too important to bail on. The guy that I learned this from described it as, if you knew how much I knew about sleep, you would never miss another minute. And he described it as the absolute most important thing in health. After that is the nutrition. Eat a well-balanced diet. Enjoy yourself occasionally. Avoid things like the high fructose corn syrup and the fried foods. Eat highly nutritious foods in large meals. Don't graze. That tends to be more unhealthy than eating full meals. Schedule time for physical activity. Doesn't have to be exercise. Do something physical. Get up, walk around, move around, get your blood flowing, your heart rate increased, and challenge your muscles at least a little bit. And then the last one is the collective of how you handle your mental health. That one's a little bit more broad. That's more personalized than the other 3 combined. Sleep is a must for everybody. Physical activity is a must for everybody. Good nutrition is a must for everybody. Mental health is your personal journey. I can't tell you how to do that. Everybody has a different way that they approach it. Find your balance. Talk to people who can help you figure out what works for you, and then put those 4 together. Healthy sleep habits, healthy nutrition, physical activity, and maintain your mental health. And if you do those 4 things, you will live the longest, happiest life that you are capable of.
Awesome.
My socials, you could find me on Twitter at esports_health. And then my website is esportshealthcare.com. And those are the most valuable resources that I have at this point. So find me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for being a part of this. And my final parting words to all of you lovely people who chose to tune in today. First of all, thank you yet again. You're obviously here because you understand that taking care of yourself is important. So if I can offer you a little kick in the butt, you all heard something, at least one thing that stood out to you here during these conversations. I saw a bunch of you typing in chat about, oh, I really need to do this. I need to do that. You have all identified a ton of needs for yourselves today. Make some notes, write them down, and then get moving right now before you go on autopilot and forget all this stuff you just heard. Take action now. You deserve to feel good. Whatever it is you're dealing with now is okay. You are beautiful as you are. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken, but we all have room to grow. And these folks here just gave you some wonderful guidance on places to start. So when we shut this down, start. Go get some stuff done for yourself. Reach out to these folks. They're all making themselves very accessible to you, and start taking back that ownership of your own life and your own overall well-being. You deserve it. You deserve it. My name is SheSnaps on Twitch and on Patreon. Otherwise, you can find me on social media everywhere by following at MindOfSnaps. And if you check out my Twitter, I'll make sure to link to everyone's accounts here one more time. I'll retweet that, and you can always go back and rewatch this video. But thank you again very much for tuning in. We appreciate you all a ton. And I'm going to assume that my buddies here at RareDrop